let's call the meeting to order. First order of business is the attendance. Oh, yes, sir. Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is attendance.
Commissioner Stravens.
Present.
Commissioner Molitor.
Present.
Commissioner Beasy.
Present.
Commissioner Ankney.
Showing quorum, we'll move forward. First order of business with that is the approval of the agenda. I'll make a motion to approve.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next order of business is the approval of minutes from February 23rd, 2022. I reviewed them. I thought they looked good. Any changes?
No changes,
Yes.
of course. You're so good about it, Bobby.
Number 4, last line. Commissioner Beasy attended and the motion and carried. Should probably be was carried.
Hold on just a second, let me get there.
So that again, Bob, you'd like to add was after the motion?
I'll put replace and with was.
So item number 4, you said?
Yes, the last line. Starts out with tip.
Oh, I see. And the motion, yeah. I'll just remove
Okay.
and, so it'll say and the motion carried.
Okay. Any other changes?
Then down 1, 2, 3, 4 more lines. We've got back in person. She further reported that the city council had conducted its first meeting back in person and the desire that other commissioners begin. So I'm not sure that and.
Where's this, Bobby?
Number 5.
Number 5,
Okay.
almost in the middle of the 1, 2, 3, 4th line down. In persons in quotes.
And what are you saying, Bobby?
That and the desire is kind of,
Oh. There's first
and
one back.
it is desired, or it was desired, or something.
How about and expressed the desire?
Okay,
Yeah, that's
Good.
good. All right, I'll make any other changes?
no,
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve with the above noted changes.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next order of business is the review of the zoning code update, Title 17 draft.
Okay. So, we received, and I forwarded on to you all a couple of weeks ago, the draft changes from Alicia. And this would be the final draft of the complete updating of the zoning code. In front of you tonight, you have another draft, and I'm going to explain that in just a moment. That's this one with the colored tabs on it. So let me just explain this and talk about moving forward. I thought that Alicia's draft was fantastic, but there were some formatting and kind of the organization of it that wasn't exactly what I had in mind. And so I went in and started trying to make some edits and adjustments. And because of that track changes format with the strike-throughs and the red lines, pretty soon I couldn't make heads or tails of what I was looking at. So what I did was late last week and over the weekend, I just retyped the entire code the way that I think it should be laid out. And that's what you have in front of you. There's no tracked red line or anything like that, so that you can read it and see what it would look like. There are some formatting things that still would need to be addressed. I understand that this is a big document that you haven't had time to look at this new draft for, but we are locked into our public hearing at our next meeting. So if we need to take a couple weeks for you to look this over more in depth than what we do tonight and schedule a special meeting to do a work session on that, then that's something that we can do. I have a bunch of stuff flagged here. I have a PowerPoint presentation to sort of walk you through what my thought process was and the changes that I made. But I think it's entirely reasonable that we may have to come back and talk about this before the public hearing. So with that, I'm just gonna go ahead and get started here with my
Christina,
power.
So, is my understanding correct that you didn't change the content necessarily? You just reformatted it for the most part?
Correct. So there are some minor content changes which are flagged for discussion tonight. What I did do, and I prepared it specifically to bring to the meeting and then left it at home, was after I completed this draft, I printed off the existing code and I went through item by item and went back into my new draft to make sure that I could find everything from the existing code in the new draft. I have that at home with all the references, and I can bring that to our work session if I need to. So rest assured that I did do that. The text changes that I'm going to point out to you, I have them flagged. So,
Okay.
Well,
okay. So I just want to start with just a little bit of background because this process has taken quite a bit. Sorry that we don't have a TV up there. It's sitting back there waiting for a bracket. We started this really in 2019, which feels like a lifetime ago. But I was thinking about all of the other things that we've done in that time. We did the update to the comp plan, the update to the shoreline. We had COVID. That took us a while to sort of regroup from, plus all of our normal annual amendments and that sort of thing. So really, when you look at the amount of work that we've done, including this, it's substantial, and that's why it took so long, but we need to wrap this up and kind of move on. So I just want to talk a little bit about kind of what the high points of our objectives were as we went through this process. First was just a comprehensive review of all of our zoning regulations, particularly where it pertained to the permitted uses. We went not through just what the uses were, but where they were allowed, was it appropriate? That took a good chunk of time. Obviously, we wanted to correct errors and inconsistencies, which we found a few of as we worked through it, and then I have found a few more in here. That's a benefit of typing the whole thing out from scratch, is you find every little detail. So I'll show you those in just a moment. This was a big one for me to try and consolidate where we could information that was repeated over and over so that in future updates, we only have to update language in as few spots as possible. That will help with consistency. We proposed some new regulations and some new information that's included in here. And then reformat it for, I think usability is a word, to reformat it so it's a little bit more user-friendly. As I've told you many times, I've had lots of comments, and I myself, when I came here, found the code very hard to navigate. And so trying to make it a little more organized to help people when they're using it was a big goal of mine. And then also to consolidate the definitions into one location. That was done in Alicia's draft. You won't see that in my draft because I felt like the definitions should maybe be at the very end of this chapter or as an appendix to the code, and we can talk about that if others have ideas about that. So here is what I could think of just off the top of my head of the things that we talked about or looked at during our review, and these are the same things that I brought back to you late last year and early this year just for a double check to make sure. Some of these things we just discussed, didn't make any changes like signage and home business. Some things we removed, like that residential dwelling size. We added the administrative exceptions. The residential fences, that was something that we looked at, and then that kind of got swept away when the citizen submitted the request for the text for the code amendment. That was right when Jay was starting out. And so that kind of got swept away, but we had looked at it, so. So some of the errors and inconsistencies that we found before that code amendment request, we had talked about that side yard fence setback. And then there were a lot of outdated references in the document. This is something that comes more from my review of it. There was 3 or 4 references to the clerk treasurer when they talked about like the keeping of official documents and that sort of thing. We haven't had a clerk treasurer here since 2009. So I just changed all of those to read city clerk. There were a couple of references to things that the town would do, and we're a city now, so I just changed those to city. In the commercial zones, there's a paragraph that talks about businesses that are storing fertilizers or other chemicals. And one of the things that it said was that a review of that would be done by the Public Works Department. I spoke with Paul Allen, our Public Works Director. That does not happen. So I took that out and just changed it to say the Spokane Valley Fire Department, because they are the ones who conduct that review. And then lastly on this list, that the book of trees, you'll see when we're talking about street trees and what trees are appropriate, the code referenced the book of trees, which I'm told is not a thing. So I have changed that language. That's one of the flagged items. The Beautification and Tree Board is currently applying for a grant to get a consultant to help them do a completely new inventory and maintenance and care schedule for the trees in the city. And as part of that, there will be a list included in that material of acceptable trees for street trees. So I just referenced that, but I'll point that out to you as we go through. New things that we've added here, we worked on very early in the process, those zoning designation descriptions that would just better describe for folks what each of our zoning designations were. You remember that, for instance, in the residential, all of our zones said urban residential district. And so we went through and added those low density, medium density, high density. I've added those in. That was one of the things that I changed from Alicia's draft, and I'll speak about that in just a moment. The one that I did not use, and you won't see in here, is the one for C2, because C2 already has that really long descriptive paragraph. The little paragraph didn't seem appropriate. We talked about the administrative exceptions. That's something that the city council had asked us to look at. We worked out some language for that. And then the residential outdoor lighting is not something that this commission has seen yet. This was a recent request from the city council based on some code enforcement complaints we've gotten. So the city council kind of workshopped that language, and it is inserted in here, and you'll see that when we get to the residential zones. So reformatting, you'll remember that I came back from that conference and mentioned that they had talked about having a table-rich code, that tables are easier for folks most times than paragraphs of text. So to that end, this was our big E that we spent the most time on, was our permitted uses table. I do want to point out, for the purposes of this draft, the one thing that I have not done is gone back and updated all of the reference on the right-hand side in the column, because that just felt like maybe if we decided not to go with this draft, that would have been a little arduous. So should we decide that this or some iteration of it is appropriate, then between now and the public hearing, I will go back in and update all of those references. And I just want to say, too, this table is invaluable in our office. to be able to answer a question quickly by just looking alphabetically makes me sound a lot more intelligent on the phone than maybe I otherwise am. And in the code that we have now, there's a lot of, all uses in the UR2 are allowed, and then you're trying to flip back and find the UR2, and the table is just really so much easier. So I do appreciate the work that was put in on that. And then the other thing that I had proposed, and I kind of worked on that residential one as soon as I came to work here, but Alicia brought in the commercial and the industrial, are these development standards table that are just an easy way for people to see based on what zone their property is located in, their setbacks and lot coverage and that sort of thing. They're real quick and handy. They're easy for me to reference in the office. They're easy to turn into a handout to send with folks. And so those are really helpful as well.
Is that, what I'm looking at on the screen, is that in our packet?
Yes,
Okay.
they're in here, yes.
Okay.
So one of the big things that I wanted to do primarily for a consistency standpoint is consolidate information that's repeated over and over, and we talked a little bit about this. So we have 3 residential zones, and in each of those residential zones, there was an identical paragraph about off-street parking, which is fine. The problem with that is, in the future, if we make some change to that, then you have to go back and change it in every location. And it doesn't always get done. And then what you end up with is competing information in different areas in the code. So my philosophy is put it in one part of the code and then refer back to it. And then your reference is always up to date. So in the residential zones, the off-street parking, storage, and outdoor lighting, those are just a few of the things that are always the same. Similarly, in the commercial zones, site improvements, stormwater treatment, that sort of thing, always the same. So in this draft that I've worked on, consolidated those things so they're just put in there one time with references back. And then this really comes down to the nuts and bolts of why I did my own draft, is I had a vision in my mind of what it would look like, and Alicia's didn't look quite like that. Hers is fine, I'm sure. This was just something that I felt more comfortable with. We may find that you all don't think it's the best way to go, and that's fine. We can discuss that as we go through, but here's what I was thinking. Starting with the residential zones, we have 3 different residential zones, and in those zones, there are some regulations that differ for each zone. So animal keeping is one, it's different in all 3 zones. Design, I think, might be the same, but I left it in every zone. And then accessory building sizes are the same in UR2 and UR3, but they're not the same in UR1. And so if I couldn't lump something together and say, this applies to all 3 zones, then I kept it separated out under these individual zones. Then below that, or after that, I guess, in the code, I have a section called Supplemental Development Regulations. So going back to that permitted use matrix, when you see these code references on the side, so something, let's see, accessory dwelling units, there's conditions that apply. That code reference would be the supplemental development regulations. That talks about the size and the setbacks, and there's supplemental development regulations for home businesses and for accessory buildings, and there's a number of different things. So those are located after our individual zones in the supplemental development regulations. And then following that is general provisions that are applicable to all residential zones. So we will, for quick reference, your tab that's number 2, it would be right behind that on page 9 of 59. You'll see 17.18 regulations applicable to all residential districts. So that would be off-street parking, storage, you'll see that new lighting section on page 10. These are the things that are the same in all 3 residential zones. And those have been consolidated into one spot instead of having each of those items repeated under UR1, UR2, and UR3. Make sense? Okay. And then lastly, same thing in the commercial zones. Same with the specific, there's the standards in the C1 and C2 are very different, especially with regard to parking and fencing, and signage is a big one. So those are kept out separate. Then you'll again have those code reference supplemental development regulations, and then under that would be the general, oh, I didn't change that to commercial, but general provisions applicable to all commercial zones. So from a concept point, am I making sense at this juncture? Are we getting it?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So what I want to do quickly with you, because some of these are errors, I want to run through the colored tabs and just chat with you about these either inconsistencies or errors so we can come to a conclusion on those. And then we can decide what we want to do from there. I don't know if you have developed questions as you went through Alicia's draft, and we can address those. We can kind of see where the discussion takes us. But for now, let's just start with your pink tab. The first one, number 1, is going to take you to the animal keeping regulations in the UR1. And I've,
One quick question.
Yes.
Alicia's draft was like 94. I tried to go through that. There's just so much information in there. But yours now looks like it's 59. So is that the consolidation of the things that you've been talking about?
I think it's a couple things. I think it's the consolidation, and then also hers is in that red line format, and mine is not, I think. Yeah. So that takes up some room as well.
Okay.
When you have all these, you know, like the strike through, that's a whole page.
Yeah, I didn't see that in this one that I got on Friday.
Yeah, I
didn't
don't
see
think
it.
we have strings.
I didn't.
But your font size and your margins are vastly.
Okay,
That's-
we're not talking about that right
No,
now.
I'm just saying.
No, that's the difference. That is the difference
Yes.
in the number of pages.
So, that is true. I did make the margins really narrow because that was how the tables fit, so,
Great.
yes.
All
And
right.
there's some other formatting problems here too, but we'll get
We
to
weren't
that.
criticizing your format.
Thanks for pointing out my mistakes. Love it. Love it.
We
love
never
you.
would have even thought of it
glad
if
we're
you
back
had
in
brought it
person.
up.
Back to work, please.
I
Okay.
didn't mean to disrupt your flow because you're doing a great job, Christina.
So you'll see I've highlighted item C there. Livestock units are defined as 1 horse, mule, donkey, burro, llama, or bovine, or 2 goats, llamas, alpacas, or sheep. So llamas are the problem. Is a livestock unit, is it 1 llama or 2? We need to make that distinction and correct that.
How big is a llama?
I don't know, but aren't,
Is it closer to a cow or is it closer to a goat?
I was leaning alpaca. Aren't llamas and alpacas very similar?
I think so.
So I was thinking to go with 2.
We have llamas in the neighborhood. They can, they're bigger than a goat,
Yeah.
smaller than a horse.
Or a cow.
Yeah.
A
Oh,
cow
yeah.
can be pretty.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
So are we comfortable with 2 then?
Yeah.
2
Yeah.
llamas. Okay, so I will make that correction no matter what way we go.
A bovine is a cow.
Yes.
We can't just say cow.
Well, it might be a bull or it might be
Steer.
I wouldn't think we'd allow.
steer
Do we
or,
allow bulls?
we'd allow steers certainly.
Steers, but not a bull.
It doesn't say.
It doesn't say we don't allow.
You could have 1 bovine with big horns.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wouldn't that be a safety issue?
Oh my God. Okay.
that's a different.
Moving on.
I'm not a bovine expert.
I want to know the difference between a mule, donkey, and a burro. Burro.
Yes.
Yeah.
List them all and we don't have to figure it out.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay, so moving on to the green number 2 on page 8 of 59. In our bed and breakfast supplemental regulations, we say there, you can see I have highlighted that an off-street parking space can be improved with gravel. That flies in the face of every other
Everything else.
regulation we have. We require paved parking. So am I okay to strike
Yes.
gravel? Great. So moving on to 3, this was actually something that Alicia pointed out. Her note in her draft said this conflicts.
Sort of.
There shall be no maximum site coverage requirement for buildings or structures if the development is providing commercial, residential, mixed use. Maximum coverage for buildings when the development is providing only commercial is 50%. So that all makes sense to me. And then the second paragraph says, maximum coverage for building structures, parking, or other impervious surfaces when the development is providing only commercial shall be 70.
That's okay. It's the last
So
one.
you get another 20% for your impervious surfaces, I guess. Maximum coverage when the development is providing mixed use is 85. Is that the problem?
That's where we run into trouble, because we said there was no limit, and now we're saying, we said there was no maximum, and now we're saying the maximum
It's
is
85.
85.
So do we want 85, or do you know what the intent there was, Bobby?
Well, I think the intent was, you can,
I think the intent was to give incentive for
Mixed
mixed
use?
use.
probably to get people's attention with the blank statement of there is no maximum.
Maximum site coverage.
You've got total, you can configure it any way you want, but you have to meet the,
Setbacks and.
the setbacks, and you have to meet the drainage requirements. And one of the things you have to meet is this 85. But I can see it feels a little, every time I read it, it feels a little inconsistent. So-
Well, so I guess the question for us is, do we want there to be no site coverage requirement? Or do we want there to be 85?
I think we need to have it be 85.
Okay.
To say no site coverage requirements, and you still have to fit in your drainage.
Drainage.
And
Okay,
I'm fine with 85.
okay. We'll change
Okay.
that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me as well.
Okay. Number 4, I only flagged this one time, but as you work your way through the document, you'll see it highlighted a number of times, and that is that reference to the Book of Trees. So I've just inserted this misspelled, which is nice. Street trees shall be choses from the current list of acceptable trees. So I'll change that to chosen. Okay, and you'll, like I said, you'll see that a few times.
So that will always reference the Millwood beautification of trees.
Correct.
Okay.
And then as they, at times throughout forever, update that list or change that list, we don't have to worry about it. We'll just refer back, and I think that's the best way. Okay.
Can I ask you a quick question? Where do we have the enforcement mechanism if it's not? Where's the enforcement mechanism in the code if it's not one of on the current list?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Shall.
does say shall.
Yeah, but I guess then what is the enforcement
Yeah.
mechanism? Is it under chapter 8.14 Civil Code Enforcement?
I'm so glad you decided to come tonight.
There is
We never-
something at the end of this
Yeah,
that
I
talks
think
about,
Under our administrative provisions, I guess.
yes, there's something there that talks about penalties and,
Well, I mean, I think it's just something we flag and keep in mind on how we're gonna address
Look
it.
into.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the only reason I raise that is we're actually looking at that on a number of different levels where things have arisen in the city that are typically only enforced under our code per criminal sanctions, but could actually be done by civil, but we just have to make that the law of the city, so.
Okay,
It's just at the forefront of mind, that's all.
okay,
Glad I'm here too, Chris.
yes,
Thank you.
always a pleasure to see you. Okay, your pink number 5 is on page 46 of 59. This I just tagged to just touch on with you. Temporary use permits in our current code are listed under C1 and C2. And the current language says something to the effect of farmers markets, craft sales can be permitted as a temporary use, which is fine. But I felt like this section that I've moved it to has conditional use permits, it has variance permits, and I thought temporary use made more sense there. The other thing about that is that in the future, if something comes up that we decide to make a temporary use, a temporary use that isn't already listed on our permitted uses matrix, then again, we don't have to go in and change it multiple places. That was my thinking. If you don't like that, we can talk about it. So that was number 5, just showing you where that is. If you look at green flag number 6, the secure community transition facilities is located throughout the code in different zones. And the language is pretty much standard in every zone. And then after I was out of the zones and back here into these more general areas, then I saw it here under the essential public facilities permitting stuff. Because I think it is considered that, my proposal, and I don't know that I've done it in this draft, but my proposal would be that we just pull it from everywhere else and keep it back here in the EFP. And then I'll just reference that code section on the permitted uses table. So if someone wants to do one, then they'll be referred to this section. And then just below that, number 7, at the bottom there, I highlighted this. In the permitted uses matrix, we do have some electric vehicle charging line items. But I think possibly on page 55 at the top, I guess maybe I didn't go back and look. This information looks like something that is located or could be located on the permitted uses matrix and therefore could just be removed from here. All of the design and review and all of that would stay here as a supplemental development regulation. But the little permitted uses lines there could be updated to the table if they haven't already.
I think they're in there,
Are they?
yeah.
I know at least 2 of them are. I wasn't sure about the battery, whatever's on the top of that other page.
The battery
Exchange station. But that
in the I-2, I think
could very easily be added if you are all fine with that. So, but we don't have the battery. So we could add that battery, whatever that was.
systems development.
And should the battery exchange station really be in public reserve? Seems like just C1
What
in
if-
industrial.
What if the city public works department gets electric vehicles and they want to be able to be swapping out batteries and stuff with that? I mean, this would mean that you for sure don't have a problem with it.
Okay. All right.
So a couple other changes that I made, and I'll try to find them quickly here from Alicia's draft. And let me tell you that back towards page 27, item I says sidewalks, and it talks about the development of sidewalks. It has the 2-way stop control table with the miles per hour. I did double check with Public Works, that should stay in there. And then I accidentally added it in thinking that I had taken it out. So as you do your review of this and you see it twice, know that I know that that was a mistake.
Which part was that?
That was on page
27?
27 of
Sidewalks.
59.
Yeah,
All that information about sidewalks, where they are located, how they should be constructed, all of that, you'll see it in here twice, and I know that that's a mistake. I
Okay.
got a little carried away there. Alicia had put for the table for the development standards of the industrial zones, she had added public reserve to that table, and I went ahead and separated that out because I just thought it was a little convoluted. So when you get to the public reserve, you'll notice that I entered a new table in there just for the public reserve standards. It's on page 23 of 59. It's labeled table 17.6. I just thought that it made more sense because public reserve really doesn't have anything in common with industrial uses.
So, when I was looking through the current code, I was trying to find numbers for the paper mill special industry one. I think that's I-2.
Yes.
I couldn't find any. Where did we come up with these numbers from?
Which numbers are you referring to?
In the table 17-5 on page 20, we have a front, rear, and side yard, and flanking street yard, and I could not find them in the current code anywhere.
I don't know. Let me.
I mean, they may well be hidden in some part I didn't get to. I'm not claiming they're not there, just I couldn't find them.
Let's see if I can just bring it up real quickly and we can look. I took that directly from Alicia's code, so I didn't double check that.
And I think that those were talking about public reserve numbers.
They could be.
The way she had it, it was hard to distinguish which was which. I would agree with you, it was kind of an awkward table.
Oh, I guess I should move this over. I don't see them. So that will need to be updated.
So those just need to be taken out.
Right.
And
So-
really, your table is just an I-1.
Right, and then I have a separate for PR1.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine. I think that's fine. I don't know how you guys feel about it. So, that is my presentation, if you want to call it that, what my thoughts were as I went through this. We can go through it and kind of look at how I referenced things back if you'd like. If there are questions from the other draft that you looked at that you want to discuss, I'm kind of leaving it up to you guys how you want to continue to go through this tonight.
So Christine, I thought you did an excellent job. I like the formatting better. I couldn't find though 1734. Where do you have it's the wireless telecommunication towers, antennas, facilities.
Yes.
Seventeen 1734 is what it was in Alicia's.
So I had to renumber. So look at 1742.
Okay, so
Yeah, I think some of Alicia's weren't, numbering might have been left blank or might have been misnumbered.
okay.
So, yeah, some of it was blank and some just didn't make sense quite.
So it's basically all here, it's just in a different format, correct?
Yes, and I, listen, I've never had to go through and renumber a whole code before, so definitely I'll want some double checking on that, just to make sure that my numbering is correct. But yeah, I had to go through and renumber as I moved stuff around, so
And I'm sorry, what number is it now?
42.
1740, page 35.
Page 35,
35 or 38?
30.
And 40, it continues
Okay.
on.
All right, so I like your formatting better. I think your formatting is much easier to read. I actually like the tables a lot. I think one of the things that I do as part of my job is to look at codes and, I have to go through tables and make sure that if a client wants to have a certain business, certain use that fits the zone, and I think this is crazy useful. So I think this is very good. I like your formatting quite a bit.
I think, and I've said this to you all before, I accidentally gained a reputation at Spokane Valley of being good at research, which is not something that I enjoy, but I ended up with every research project. And so I have spent a lot of time in other jurisdictions' codes from all over the country. And I think there is value in codes having some similarities in the way that they're laid out, because it does make it easier for people, especially where we're located, where there's so many jurisdictions so close together that people are working in all over the place, that a little bit of continuity, I think, helps the developers and citizens just to be able to find what they're looking for a little easier. So I think this format, although I didn't use anybody else's code to develop it, probably is a little bit more alike to some of the other codes in our area.
I agree. I think it's quite easy to go from one zone, especially like residential. If you're a developer, you can look at UR1 and compare it to UR2 quickly and easily. You're going to put the definitions in an appendix.
That's my preference.
I much prefer that.
I think that one of the problems with the existing code is if just a Joe citizen goes in and is looking for a definition and they see a section that says definitions and they don't find what they're looking for, I don't think they're intuitively going to look for other sections named definitions. And so I think consolidating all of those into just one place makes a lot of sense that way.
I agree. I like the appendix idea. I like that you took out, I didn't like that each section had the same language. I like that it's consolidated.
One of the other things that I changed, and this was kind of really the start of me thinking maybe I needed to redo it myself, was when we came up with those little paragraphs about each zone, Alicia had those kind of all lumped in at the beginning of her draft that said purpose or something. And that's fine, but it wasn't really how I had it in my mind. And then with the C2 zone having that paragraph, it just seemed that it made more sense that each one of those little definitions would go into each of the individual zones. It's just a preference thing. But I think it makes a little bit more sense when we're trying to keep sort of consistent with how they all look, and C2 has that description at the beginning, so.
Okay. Go ahead, Bobby.
So I have a lot of things, 3 days of going through this. And you corrected a lot of them, I think, with your,
Did you find the llamas?
I did not find the llamas. I
See,
read
now
right
feel
past
like
the
I
llamas.
accomplished something.
But I did find some other things.
Okay,
And-
good.
And, you know, you may have found some of them, fixed some of them,
Okay.
but just maybe we can go through and look quickly. You found the CUP versus the C where she had them just all the same, and that
Yeah,
just did
she
not
didn't
work.
understand that. I did go back and correct all of those.
Yeah, so that was, and added the A,
Right.
which was good. I was kind of wondering, why did we decide that community center could only be in C1 and C2? We decided it's okay to have churches and police departments and all other kinds of things with a conditional use permit in R1, R2, and R3, but we cannot have a community center in UR1, UR2, UR3, which is unfortunate because the only community center really that we have in Millwood is in UR2.
I don't remember
I don't
that
know.
discussion.
I'm not sure we discussed
sure
this
we
over
just-
so long that it may have just gotten, when the X's were filled in, they may have just been filled in without it being our
Yeah, I'm not
actual
opposed to
intent.
changing that.
So I think that should be changed to CUP for,
In the residential
in the
zones.
residential ones, so that, I mean, because it's a lot like a church.
Jay, are you okay with that?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So the other one was, where did we end up putting home business information? I couldn't find it in Alicia's, and sure
Like
that you've
the
got it in it.
regulations for it?
Yeah,
I don't know where it was in hers. In mine, it was in those supplemental,
but it is in there.
yes, it is
Okay,
in there.
that's good enough.
I think it was on that same page with the bed and breakfast gravel thing. Yeah, it's right below that.
Okay.
So page 8 of 59.
Okay, another one I had was outdoor business activities. First of all, we say right-of-way permit required, which implies that you need a right-of-way permit to have a dining patio in back of your restaurant, and that's not really true. Only if you're going to use, right-of-way permit is required if on public right-of-way, or if you're using a public right-of-way, but it's not just required in order to have, right?
No, I think you're right.
And then I was wondering,
Before you move on from that.
okay,
Should we just add that in the conditions then, if located in public right-of-way? Okay,
yeah, I think,
And where are
That
we,
would be-
what page are we in?
3 of 59 of my draft.
Okay.
Outdoor business activities towards the
Okay,
bottom.
I've got it.
So if in the public right-of-way.
yeah.
Okay.
Then on that same outdoor business activities, we've got an X for I-1. And it seems to me a lot of like what Aero Construction does, and a lot of places in the I-1 zone are going to have things going on outdoors. They maybe have piles of different styles of bricks that they're showing people outdoors or whatever. So it seems like we need to have that be permitted in I-1 also.
I don't think that that's unreasonable. Just outright permitted.
I think so.
I know that
I mean, although the same right-of-way thing would apply, so.
when they talk about, in the supplemental regulations, they talk about storage, and they make an exception out for like vehicles that are for sale. And that would be the same sort of thing, I think.
Outdoor,
When you
yeah.
have materials, okay?
So either P or C, I don't,
Outdoor business activities.
yeah.
What were you asking about special events? A special event permit, like it says something to the effect of you're expecting 100 people or more. Okay, I've got that noted.
So are we going to permit that then? Is that what you're proposing?
That's what I propose.
Okay. Any objection?
No.
Okay, none here.
Then, see how you handled the residential.
One of the other changes that I made, residential starts on page 5, is, and we talked about this, the moving of the UR1 in front of UR2. It had been flipped before, and I thought that
Yes.
was a little crazy, so I did move it to the front.
Yeah, Alicia did that too, so that they're now in numerical
that.
order. But, okay, the residential on that table, residence, single family, duplex, multifamily. And then we have residence attached to commercial use. There's something a little wonky about the C2 here. In C2, the only way you can have residence is if it is attached to a commercial use. and we don't specify how many units. So I think that those under C2, single-family duplex, maybe need to be X's,
Okay,
with the residence attached to commercial use being permitted.
okay,
And then, of course, we need to have a reference at the side that talks about what percentage, because there's a thing, if it's less than so many percent of the total square footage, then it can be on the main floor, otherwise it needs to be on the second floor,
and that's outlined in the C2, correct?
in the current C2,
So we could
yes.
reference to that
Yes.
information, okay.
Yes. But I think it's misleading to say permitted on those others when it's only if it's attached.
Right.
If it's in the same building as,
Okay,
so, okay. And then I'll be really curious when you get the references in.
yes,
I
and
know
I
how
will
it
expect, I will request that you will double check those. So I'll work on those as quickly as I can so that I can get them out to you all and you can kind of double check my work on those references.
Now, when this is put online in the municipal code, can they have those references so you click on them and you go there?
I don't know, but I can ask.
It does.
I think it does
Should
do
be,
that.
so, yeah.
It has some other things like that. That would be
The-
slick.
The Muni code source that we use, I think it does allow jump sites to the internal references. I know, I think that's what we've done in other contexts.
Yeah, it is in the code as long as
Oh,
they
yeah,
can
here.
do it in the
Oh, it'll
tables
even just
also.
bring it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty slick,
Yeah,
yeah. There's certain Muni code, or the cities historically use Muni code. Other online sources don't allow that, it's not, it's
Oh.
on gate.
Well, and I don't know if you've looked at the county's municipal code. It's a PDF. It's not even like codified. You have to scroll, and it's a couple hundred pages. You're scrolling and scrolling and
no.
scrolling.
Some would say that's done purposefully.
well,
It doesn't make it user-friendly.
I mean, what purpose in there is there in having the people that want to do things not able to figure out for themselves whether it's legal or not?
Yeah.
I want you to go in and talk to development in permitting services to find out what you can and can't do.
Uh-huh. So,
I
okay,
didn't turn my microphone on that, by the way.
there is one more in the table.
Sure.
Public utility local distribution facility that we have disallowed everywhere except I-1, which would mean the water system in the park would be illegal. Avista's yard out here would be illegal. And the old code specifically mentions police stations, fire stations, and public utility facilities as being allowed.
So Bobby, what's the difference between public utilities above that and public utility local distribution facility?
Well, a facility is a place, amenity, or piece of equipment provided for a particular purpose. Had to look up facility.
That's in our definitions.
No, that's in the Oxford American English
So I wonder
Dictionary.
if like our Butler well,
Yeah,
that's a piece of equipment.
yeah.
The Avista thing would be more like a distribution facility.
It's a distribution facility. All of our water stuff, we're distributing the water.
But can't we
You
just
know-
call that public utility?
No, it's I mean, if we want to take away distribution facility and cross it out entirely, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's what I think we do.
And then just leave public utilities as permitted.
Yeah, yeah,
Across
that's
board.
okay. Because, you know, you get into the sewer, and that's actually a collection facility instead of a distribution facility.
Since we have
Okay.
council here, is there any problem with that, the UC council?
Why would public utilities not be permitted in the field?
I don't know.
Well, I
Yeah,
guess- the
that's a
only-
good question, too.
yeah.
Yeah, so it should be permitted.
I mean, I think all of our facilities are PR, right? So, okay, let's change, just permitted across the board.
Yes.
For public utilities, and then remove public utility local distribution facility.
The only thing I can think of that you might wanna consider is, outright permitted means it can happen, so to the extent that Avista wants to come in and put a large substation, and they may have a federal right to do it, but to the extent that they wanna put it in a residential, Avista or somebody else wants to put a large distribution or facility in a residential area, I think the city wants to retain some authority over how, so long as it's legal or required by federal law, that doesn't mean that you can't otherwise consider the impacts. And when you just say permitted, it can go in and it can go right in on somebody's, on the backyard of somebody's property and be there. I don't know, I think we wanna think about outright permitting that without some sort of review or consideration of how the effects of that might be in terms of whether you want to require some screening, some safety features.
So for the use of this table, should we put in residential and PR, should we put conditional?
Well, not if, but then we need to write the conditions.
Right.
Then we'd have to write the.
Could it be a conditional use permit or no?
I think it could be. I mean, you'd have you have the conditional use permit criteria.
But how big are we talking? Are we talking a cabinet that sits out on the street so the telephone company can hook up their wires? Or are we talking something giant that Avista puts in with smart applications and large transformers?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you just want to be careful about removing language that you've historically had and just outright making, and then otherwise allowing what might have been not allowed under certain residential or commercial zones. You know, a distribution facility is a larger, more impactful development on property that might otherwise impact the surrounding properties. So
I see.
I'm not sure this was in our current code even. I don't know where this came from. I've not bumped into it in any of my reading. It might have been in the I-1 code and just not in any other code, so we just assumed it was X's everywhere else. I don't know. We might look into where it came from originally.
Well, so now I'm leaning,
Where?
Right here in I-1 permitted uses, public utility, local distribution facility.
So we mentioned it in one. We didn't mention it, I don't think, in any of the others.
I'm
And
probably,
then
I
we
can
assumed
look.
it was therefore, prohibited, when maybe it shouldn't be prohibited. And we have another section of text somewhere in our code that talks about utilities specifically, and right-of-ways, and I can't remember where it is, but I know I've been into it at some time in the past. And I did not bump into it for this project.
Yeah, so it is not, these are the permitted uses for C1, it's not in there.
But
Oh,
it's not prohibited either.
But look, C1 does have battery exchange. So,
And C2 does have it as permitted. Because I printed that one out.
has-
No, UR2 has it as permitted. UR2 says, police stations, fire stations, and public utility facilities, provided that the requirements of the public zone shall be met. So we do approve of it in UR2. I think it was whenever we thought of it when we were writing it wasn't consciously prohibited, I don't think,
where's the
anywhere.
CUP language under yours?
it is, look on page 46. That'll be close to where it is. Maybe starting on 45. Did I just hear something? What was
I
that?
think it might just be in the microphone.
Oh, yeah, page 45.
on, you know, if you wanted to, you just want to think on that one a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that you want to make it an outright permitted use. Correspondingly, if it's a CUP, a city project could be subject to
Yeah.
review as well. And that's not a bad thing. That's, I mean, the city can be as accountable as any other user of property.
but I think scale is important. I mean, we've got all over town where the telephone company has cabinets at the side of the road where they hook the various wires to go to the different homes. And those are technically a distribution facility.
Yeah.
They meet the definition of facility and they are definitely distribution.
We may have already granted, you know, telephone, gas, certain other utilities have a separate statutory right via the franchise agreements.
Yeah,
That we have to enter into. So I think to the extent that a development would not otherwise be covered by a franchise agreement, if you want, you know, a utility development, a utility project was not subject to franchise or some other legally granted right, then I think you'd probably want it subject to a CUP.
That's what I would think.
I don't know how you
So,
language that, but.
so what about like all of the water distribution that is city-owned?
Well, I
And to
think
some
you're splitting
extent, the
hairs. Then I-
sewer stuff.
yeah, but I think that's public utilities, right?
It is, and that's what we're talking about.
Well, but,
It's located in the right of way too. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think we're not governing use of right of way under this. We have a separate chapter of the city code.
right.
Right of way is not covered by zoning code in terms of use of right of way.
Okay, so that takes care of the sewer, but you still have all the water distribution stuff, the pump houses and the generators and the standpipe and,
So I think the easy thing to move forward, Bobby, is we keep public utility distribution facility and make it CUP across.
Unless otherwise allowed by law or franchise.
Yeah.
I think the likelihood, at least from the city water distribution, is I don't see the city in a position of needing to drill another well, installing another pump house. So the likelihood of some sort of new distribution facility being triggered for the city on the water side is remote. We're just not, we don't have any opportunity to grow to require that further demand. I think you're probably right. I think you're on the distribution facility, if you make that a CUP, so that way it doesn't have the impact of, you know, of other, it needs to be harmonious with the surrounding properties and uses.
well, that's what our current thing referred
CUP
to,
language is.
provided the requirements of the public zone shall be met. That was under UR2. Not sure. So if we're going to do public utility and make it CUP, we maybe need to have a note or reference to the individual agreements, you know, unless
The franchise agreements.
approved in a or unless covered in a franchise
Yeah,
agreement
you
or
rattled
something like
something
that.
off
Yeah.
that sounded pretty good, so maybe we can just talk about that.
And they can never repeat it.
That's all right, I'll go back and watch the video.
That sounds good.
Yeah, unless
All right.
otherwise required by law or
Yeah, exactly.
city-approved franchise agreement.
Yep, that sounds
Email
good.
it to me. Okay,
Good.
all right.
Moving forward.
Okay.
And just a comment. It's what's currently in there, so I'm not gonna make us change it, but the definition for omnidirectional antenna, it says also known as a whip antenna. There are a lot of omnidirectional antennas that are not whip antennas. It's sort of like saying a personal vehicle, also called an SUV. You know, when you've got lots of vehicles that aren't SUVs. So, say, now may not be the time to change it, but just for the record, it's wrong.
I'll make a note and maybe look for some other definitions.
Good.
Yeah. Then in the definitions, we used, I don't know about your new version, but the other one used the word condominium in several different ways. Sometimes it's used like, we think of condominiums as purchased apartments, but sometimes it's just used as an apartment. Because it refers to, under the definition for apartment houses, it refers to condominiums. So could we define condominium maybe?
Well, I guess the other thing you'd want to search out is if it's not being used in the sense of an apartment or apartment-like, but if it's being used under the condominium act itself, if it's under a declaration, a condominium declaration.
Right.
That has yet another legal definition, yeah.
So we refer apartment house means any building or portion thereof that contains 3 or more dwelling units and includes residential condominiums. It's just one of them I ran into. So I think they're meaning a place with your own kitchen and your own bathroom and shower. I think that's what they're referring. And then there's some other places where it talks about number of feet facing the frontage, and it refers to condominium units have to have so many feet. And I'm sure it's not talking about purchased units, it's talking about apartments or purchased units. So if we have some kind of definition that,
Okay. I will look for a couple of different definitions maybe and bring them back.
and then front property line is different in or is the same in all the zoning units except C2. It has a different definition if you look at the current code.
Okay.
And so that should maybe be reflected.
What was that, front property line?
Front property line, yes, is defined everywhere except C2 is defined a little differently. And I think it's important for C2 that it.
So C2's definition should match everyone else's? No.
No.
Everyone else should match C2?
No, I think.
Oh,
that-
it needs to
I
be
think we need to
separate.
reflect in all, C2, this is the definition, in all the others, this is the definition.
Okay.
Because C2, all the others talk about on the plat, what's platted is the front property line. C2 talks about if it's on a corner, the part facing the street with the highest use. So we have places on Euclid that were actually platted to face Hutchinson, for instance, but Euclid should be their front. So if you talk about the road with the highest use, then it makes it right.
Okay.
Then, if your definition was a copy, flanking side street means a yard extending from the front yard to the rear yard, except in the case of a corner lot, when the side yard on the flanking street shall extend to the rear property line. I'm not sure you should use flanking street to define flanking street.
That sounds like John Madden wrote that, doesn't it, from the NFL games? Man.
Okay.
Then I noticed that the term definition is a little different in the different zones. Development is different in the different zones.
I will
So we
admit,
should look at that.
I didn't look at the definitions closely, so this is good. I will go back and look at them.
Then I was wondering if we could define impervious.
I will look around and see what I can find and bring it back.
Then low-intensity commercial has a nice definition, but at the end of the definition, it says, it is the intent of this zone to be for less intensive uses than the C1 zone. So clearly that last chunk doesn't belong in the definitions.
And what definition was that?
Low-intensity commercial. Then related equipment means all equipment ancillary to the transmission and reception of voice and data. That we probably have related equipment in things other than communications. So you might want to look at related equipment.
Okay.
Okay, then one thing I noticed in the tables for the minimum lot area max stuff is the current code has the line in there in all of them on the lot frontage. Minimum lot width the same as the lot frontage. In other words, we don't want any pie-shaped lots. That has kind of fallen out of things, so maybe that needs to be added to this lot frontage width. So if you're short 10 feet from being able to build a duplex, you can't buy a 10-foot by 10-foot chunk from your neighbor to say, okay, I've got the frontage now.
Okay, so I could add that as a footnote at the bottom.
Okay.
Footnote number 6. So under lot frontage / width, I'll just put a 6 there and then add that language at the bottom of the footnote table at the bottom.
Okay, now, Alicia's has 6 already, and condominium is number 6. But number 2, I don't know if you caught it. The version we got says includes all other impervious surfaces. 40% of the area shall be left as open space free from structures, and I think that that's actually 60%. Where does 2 come?
So the way that it's written now, you can have 40% of your lot covered with buildings and a total of 60% covered, period. And then that number 1, well, this is on mine, the number 1 refers to includes all other impervious surfaces. That 60% would then refer to this includes all other impervious surfaces.
Okay, yeah. What page is that on?
That's on mine, page 5.
So we've, and that is for maximum total lot coverage. And we have maximum building coverage, maximum total lot coverage, okay. Yeah, that's better.
Okay? Next, Bobby.
Yeah, I'll have to look at those when we get them. Okay, then I'll have to see how you handled each individual one. The way she had it written, it just kind of jumped into not making sense, and it seemed like if you go into the code, the Mooney, the code online, and you click on UR1, you expect to see what you can do in UR1. So it seemed like maybe there should be a statement at the beginning of that about see table 1 for permitted uses. With something live you can click on to go back to table 1.
That'd be good.
You know, for each of the sections.
Right.
If it,
Do you have more details, Bobby, or
well,
are you
oh,
pleased with the overall format?
I like the new one much better.
And so do I.
What was the question? I'm sorry, what? I wasn't listening.
I asked Bobby if generally she liked the format.
Oh,
And Jay, you generally like the format?
Oh, I'm a major learning curve here, so yes, that helps me a lot.
Bobby, do you have specific,
There are some specific things that I don't, I'm trying to figure out the best way to coordinate the two. There is,
well, the other thing, Bobby, is I think probably we should do a special meeting.
I think we need to, yeah, to,
maybe just go back and regroup with this new draft, and
yeah.
it's
yeah.
hard, I'm getting anxiety looking at the two drafts being, that's a lot of paper over there.
It is, I think we got through most of the specific ones. I did have a couple others, I'm not sure how to reference them on yours. One place has got assessor and an ADU shall not be permitted on the same parcel.
A what?
Exactly. Assessor and an ADU shall not be permitted. Now, in the original code, or current code, it says a bed and breakfast and an ADU shall not be permitted on the same parcel.
What is that?
So
What
that's
page?
under accessory dwelling units, wherever that ended up. And in hers, that was C.
So mine would be.
But if you retyped it, hopefully you found that.
That's newly typed by me. But I'm thinking maybe page 7 of mine.
Yeah, page
I
seven,
have
so what are you-
a bed and breakfast establishment and an ADU shall not be
Okay.
permitted on the same
You found
parcel.
Okay.
A home business and an ADU shall not be permitted.
Mhm.
Only one ADU. I may have caught that inadvertently, Bobby.
I think so.
Okay.
Where in yours is the table for the building setbacks in the C1 and C2 zone?
It is on starting on page 10.
Page 10, wow. Did we? Okay, we did not pick up building setbacks. We haven't specified in here maximum, minimum, but actually building setbacks front in C1, 25-foot minimum, C2 is 25-foot maximum. So there's a huge difference.
Okay, I'll double check those and,
Yeah, current code is no more than 25 feet setback for C2.
I feel like I noticed that, but
We fixed it once before, but so much has gone on that,
Okay. I will fix that and have that out to you.
yeah, because that was a huge one. We don't want to inadvertently change. And then on hers, she dropped a story from C1 that on properties with frontage on, currently, on properties with frontage on Trent Avenue, no building shall exceed a height of 45 feet, nor shall any building exceed 4 stories. And her table had 3 stories. Yeah, see, it still says 3 stories.
Yeah, I just took her table, so
And actually it is now 4. I mean, it is in the current code 4.
I'll go back and just completely redo that table.
And then in hers, again, it did not have the updated fencing that I know we passed. And actually, I think it went through the city council and became law.
So my fencing is on,
25. Yeah, 25E, fences, rear side yard.
doesn't feel right to me, but okay.
So are you thinking that should be in the table, in the matrix?
Well, no, it just wasn't updated.
Rear and rear side
In
shall not
hers.
exceed 6 feet.
So it's been updated here. Hers still had the side street, you can't be
Oh.
over stuff in it that
And I
needed changed.
think maybe I recognize that because I did go back in and double check what we had adopted. So yeah, I
Yeah.
must have
Good.
caught that
Yeah.
and just.
Perfect. I wanted to get most of these on here so that we don't have this huge a thing to change next time too.
You're right, exactly.
You
And then
know,
we have a
so
public
that we-
hearing. Yeah.
You know, so there'll just be oh, this looks good, and just 1 or 2 little. So I think that's the really big stuff.
Okay.
Well, okay. That's just a spelling error that probably got changed, so.
Okay, so I want to just run through my list to make sure that I've got, haven't missed anything. So I'm going to look for 1 or more definitions of omnidirectional antenna.
Okay.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay, omnidirectional antenna, I'll look for some different definitions. Condominium, I'm gonna look for a couple different definitions, bring those back. I'm going to look at the front property line descriptions and see how those can better be displayed so that C2 is identified as different. I'm gonna work on the flanking street definition so that we don't use flanking street to describe flanking street. I'm going to look for some new definitions for development so we can find one that we think works better. I'm gonna look for some definitions for impervious. On low-intensity commercial definition, I'm gonna remove the last line. I have related equipment dash what question mark, so I'm gonna look into what that is. And then I'm gonna redo completely the commercial development standards table. So that was the 4-story or 3-story. So that's, and really, I don't think these will probably take too long. So what I'll do is I'll work on this, make this a high priority, and then hopefully by the end of next week, be able to shoot out a new draft of mine with these things. Plus, I also have all the notes I made from the corrections within the document. I'll try and get this all done and out to you by the end of next week, so that then we can schedule a special meeting and you'll have some updated information.
Should we schedule a meeting?
Well, yeah, why don't we wait, let's move on and finish, and then during staff report, I have some other related information. We can talk about it then.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so are we all in agreement that we like this format? Christina worked hard on it.
We go with this last version
We
that
go with
Christina did.
Christina's
Yeah,
version.
I agree.
Thank you, I appreciate that
Yes,
vote of
That
confidence.
was very nice.
Great job.
A lot of work,
Thank you.
Yeah.
but
Yes.
but definitely fixed a lot of the problems.
I think it'll be much more user-friendly, and I won't get any more comments from the hearing examiner's office or anything about how terrible it is, so.
All right, so next order of business, staff report.
Oh, do you not have the amended agenda?
Yeah,
Oh, so, findings move to approve CPA 01/2021 and move to approve CPA 02/2001. Do we need to make a motion to,
Yes, you'll need to take those each individually. Those are just the findings from the comprehensive plan amendments that you held the public hearing on at your last meeting. You remember the first CPA 01/2022 is the updated language for the historic preservation chapter. And so I just have the findings there. And
so I've got a question on that. I recused myself from that, so I really don't feel competent to say whether or not these were the findings,
we don't have a quorum.
and does that,
Yeah, yeah.
so is it a majority of those that are, of the quorum that is here?
Yep.
Okay,
Majority of the quorum.
perfect.
Oh, okay.
Jay, do you have those? I did not have those.
I did not, I've got
They
the
came out.
updated, or amended agenda, but I didn't get these last.
Should be on the, or they're on the very back pages, they were part of
Of this?
Well, they were in,
the amended.
they came out after the packets came. They came out online.
Oh, yes.
They were not in the
Do you wanna
packets
give
that
me
you
yours
got.
I saw the amended agenda, but I
So-
didn't see those, so,
There's
okay,
that one that,
thank you,
I got my notes on this one, but
okay.
So we're still in open meeting, we're not in recess, so.
Right.
so I think the main point is the findings there, where you go down the list of findings and see if that matches what you remember finding.
Right.
We've had 3 public viewers tonight.
Oh, good.
Hmm.
It's 2 more than the city council had.
Well,
Well, we're much more interested, Brian.
live though, because I actually went back later and watched
There
city
you go.
council.
Yep.
It's nice that you can say, watch a important basketball game or something
That's
and
true.
still watch the council meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take 2 minutes to review this. Yes, and so.
Yes, that was what you guys deliberated on at the
Right.
public hearing.
Yeah, so this is our last meeting, so this is the public hearing. The first one dealt with the city initiated request for text amendment to update the language. So after reviewing, I'll make a motion to approve the CPA 01/2001 findings and
I'll second that.
okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And I also reviewed the CPA 2021 findings. And I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a
Oh,
change. This does not match my memory.
okay. Go ahead, Bobby.
I remember finding that adding the oh, what is it called?
The TIP.
The TIP,
Transportation Improvement Plan.
that it did address an identified deficiency, that it was something the comprehensive plan did not have, should have, was preventing the city from all kinds of good things, so I don't see how it's not a deficiency. And I remember deciding that, and I thought that everybody agreed when we voted.
So sorry, I'm trying to get into the findings. When we went back and looked, the comprehensive plan did have the 2019 tip
Did not have a
in it.
current one, however.
Right, so maybe that was decided that it was a deficiency. And I can change that
And which number is that, Bobby?
That's number 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, top of the second page.
Yeah, we did discuss that. I don't know, did we call it a deficiency though in the comp plan?
I think so, and I think that our case for passing it is much stronger with it being a deficiency, which is what we decided it was. It needed to be there. We've done a whole page of reasons that it needed to be there.
Right.
And it wasn't, the current one was not there and would not be there ongoing unless we put it there ongoing. So it was a deficiency.
Okay,
So
And it's what we said at the time, so.
okay,
So changing number 5 to say it does address an identified deficiency?
yes.
Okay,
So I'll make a motion to approve with the above noted change to the finding for number 5. It does address a deficiency in the comp plan.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next order of business, staff report.
I do, yes. Okay, I have a few things for you tonight. The first one is at the March meeting of the city council, a fifth member was appointed to this commission. Her name is Savannah Wu. She is, I believe she grew up in Millwood, married, moved to Northwood, now has moved back. I met with her last week, and she's really enthusiastic, really interested in what's going on in Millwood, and I was impressed with her. She is not here this evening because she is in Mexico participating in an Ironman, which she does on a fairly regular basis. I don't like her, but we need another member. So she will be with us when next we meet. Additionally, I told her that there was a opportunity, or a possibility that we may be having a special meeting on this code stuff. Because she hasn't been here and doesn't know, I told her I didn't think it was imperative for her to be here, but she said she might come just to listen and try and get a feel for how things work, so. But you do have a fifth member, so we're back to being a full board again, which is good news. Referencing the special meeting things, on April 20th, we will be having an evening with Mr. Worst. Open Public Meeting Act training, which is necessary in light of the amount of time it's gone by since we've been meeting in person. I think we all need a refresher, as well as some new rules and regulations that have come out on this backside of the pandemic. So in addition to that,
April 28th, what time?
April 20th.
20th, at what
Yes. So I'm getting there, don't rush me.
Okay.
In addition to the Open Public Meetings Act training, we are going to have a photographer here taking new pictures for the website. We're going to do it differently this time, where we're gonna do each one individually so that we don't end up where we are now with a picture on our website that has 2 of you out of 5. So we're just gonna do headshots, and we are going to be providing dinner that night. So doors will open, photographer will be here starting at 5 o'clock, dinner and photos, and then training from 6 to approximately 7. Talking with Brian before the meeting and my belief that we'd probably need a special meeting, he proposed possibly then having a work session after that from maybe 7 to 8, or we can plan a different evening if you'd like to come and do your work session on the code. It's up to you guys.
Well, let's do a different.
So what
Do a
day,
different one.
what day of the week is that?
It's a Wednesday.
Okay, because I thought we had talked about it being a Thursday when we talked with the Historic Preservation Commission.
No, it's Wednesday, the 20th.
Okay, so I think that changed, so.
So Kelly's saying maybe do a different night.
Yeah, I'd like to do, can we do the 13th
For this review of this or for?
for our special meeting?
The review.
For the review of that, yes.
Yeah.
We're locked in on the educational experience.
Yeah, that's-
We're locked in. And the only I actually do work in the evening, and so I can't be too late. So if we did Wednesday the 13th at 6 p.m., special meeting.
I think so.
Okay.
That'll work for you.
Does that work
Okay.
for you?
If you work in the evening,
I'm not sure you need to be here.
Yeah, no, I'll just hold it, just in case you guys want it.
Okay.
if you work in the evening, would 5 be better, or you're?
I feel like I have something on the 13th.
What's that?
I don't know, I
You-
feel like I have something on the 13th, but I'm sure whatever it is.
And
can-
5 actually does work better for me, but it's up to you guys.
5 o'clock for the meeting time?
Yeah, that would.
5,
Will that work for you, Bobby?
fine for me.
I think it can.
Okay, so the 13th at 5.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Jay.
Okay. So a couple of other things that I just want to mention to you all. On Saturday, May 21st, we have 2 events going on that day here. One is a city work day, city cleanup day. Apparently these were done before I came here. This came about because Paul mentioned that there needs to be some trimming, pruning, bark spreading along the trail. And then the county chimed in and said that they would provide bags and gloves and garbage picker-uppers if we could get volunteers out here to just do a couple hours of cleanup. So if you are available that day, I believe, this is lucky timing. I'll be winging my way to Little Rock to a city clerk conference. But if you're available to help out that day, meeting in the park, The plan, at 9 a.m., I believe. The plan, I believe, is hopefully to get enough board members, council members, commissioners, that we could separate groups up in by quadrants of the city and kind of have one of our commissioners or city council kind of heading up the little group. On that same day, there's going to be a tire collection event put on by the county. They've done this a couple times. They just set up down at the end of the park on the east end by the water tower. And you can bring old tires, no wheels, just the tires, and drop them off. So that'll be going on at the same time. I wanted to give you an update on the property up on Empire that had come in for preliminary subdivision and had been denied right around Christmas, because I have got some phone calls, so word is getting out. The developer has now pivoted and is planning a 24-unit manufactured home park on that property. It meets,
It's between Fowler and Butler.
maybe.
I think it says something in there about it has to be between Fowler and Butler. Just stuff I was reading last night.
Yeah, I don't think it does. It does say that it has a few roads that it has to have frontage on, and Empire is one of them. I don't recall that, Fowler and Butler. I'll go back and look. Right now, that's his proposal. And as far as the manufactured home park regulations, he is meeting all of those. He's met with the fire department. It looks like it's going to go. So if you get questions, like I said, I've had a few phone calls from residents over that way. And that is an outright permitted use. So there's no hearing or anything required on that. This is maybe more directed at Bobby than anyone else, but we are opening the pool again this year and are looking for pool attendants. Need to be 16 years old with the lifeguard certification. I know you have some grand babies who are around that age. So we're gonna need 2 pool attendants. They make, I think, $16.50 an hour, and then a park employee, park worker, needs to be 18 with a valid driver's license. So if you know of anyone that meets any of those and would be interested, let us know. And then I met last week with 2 individuals who are moving into Millwood and are desiring of and going to be appointed to our Historic Preservation Commission. So for the first time in years, we're gonna have all of our boards fully manned. So that's exciting. These folks both have actually a history with historic work. The gentleman is a stained glass artist who is approved by the city of Spokane to work on historic buildings, and he has a particular interest and history with wood windows. So they seem like they're well suited for this commission. I think that's going to be good.
So, just talking to the mayor, it did not sound like he'd appointed anyone yet, that he was still accepting applications for.
I think he could, but right now, they're the only 2 applicants we've gotten, and so they will.
It's only been out for.
Well, no, it's been out for years. I mean, I've been.
Well, the one has, but the fact that you were allowed to be out, not live in Millwood is brand new. So I saw it on the website, but I don't think it's been there for a really long time.
Well, I haven't gotten anyone else. The one other person that we thought would be cannot because of her family medical situation. So barring anyone else applying, the intent is to appoint them at the next meeting.
All right.
And I think that is all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
I have a question. I don't know, in one of the first meetings, I think Brian talked about can't have more than 2 people in attendance. attendance at a meeting, does this cleanup day, is that going to be an issue that this could be construed as a meeting?
I think the only caveat that we'd wanna just advise anybody that's attending is not, I mean, while you're there engaging and acting on behalf of and with the city to avoid a discussion of
Okay,
official city businesses.
okay, all right.
Those are great opportunities. I mean, I think people do take some attorneys would take a harder stance on that because it's, you know, the action under the OPMA is pretty broad, and so receipt of information can be deemed to be an action under the OPMA, and when you're out and about in the community, that, you are taking in information, right? But that's the same thing as if you're out walking your dog.
Yeah,
You're driving
exactly.
to the store, so,
Okay,
yeah,
alright.
no, that's a good call, good question.
Any other
$50 an hour?
Any other questions?
Well, the
for-
minimum, that's just a
Yeah.
little over minimum. Minimum's close to 15.
I lifeguarded for $3.75 an hour.
Yeah.
I know.
County's paying 15.
You grew up too early.
Yeah, I did, I know. Yeah, the county's paying 15 for second year.
Well,
certified.
good, maybe we'll get some of the better people then.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Commissioner comments related to planning and zoning? Thank you, Christina, for your hard work.
Yeah.
This was
Great job.
excellent, yeah, very good. Thank you for commissioners for being well prepared. I thought this was good. Remember, we have a public hearing next.
First, we have a
Next month.
special meeting, and then we have the public
Yeah, and so
hearing.
we have that special meeting, so we have to agree at that special meeting. I do think it would be good to have our new commissioner here, even if she just listened, just to see how things work.
Okay, you learn a lot, believe me.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm a new kid on the block right now, so, yeah.
And I told her there would be a learning curve, so, and I did tell her that I did include her on the packet for this meeting, and I told her that I would include her going forward, so
Very good.
hopefully we'll see her soon.
I hope we didn't scare her off with this particular package.
Yeah.
Okay.
My gosh.
She does Ironmans, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's true.
Different kind of stuff.
Great point. Great point.
All right, any other commissioner comments?
No?
Question, the cleanup day was what day? What date?
Saturday, May 21st.
Oh, May 21st,
May
okay.
21st.
That's the problem.
I will
I
be
couldn't-
sailing in a sailboat race
Oh,
down in Pasco. Desert Regatta. Yeah,
desert regatta,
Desert Regatta, yeah, that's what they call it.
Okay.
First time in 2 years they've had it,
cool.
post-COVID. Huh?
That's on the Columbia.
So it's right behind the dam, so it's, Charbonneau State Park.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a real nice park. And the guys are so nice. It's quite a nice regatta.
That's all your boat down there?
Yeah, so I have a friend that has a Buccaneer 18.
Oh,
Yeah, so we do a little bit of racing, so.
okay.
Yeah, we'll try to do 4 races this year, we'll see. Yeah, all right,
Okay, so where were we in our,
Ready to
Yeah.
adjourn.
we're getting ready to, so we've set our next meeting. Any other commissioner comments? Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Jay seconds, all in favor? Aye.
aye.
I saw that we lost out on